grew deeper. In the early 1970s, to counter the Soviet threat, China and America improved their relations. In 1972, the American President Richard Nixon visited China. And in 1973, the American government established a liaison office in Beijing. The two countries, enemies for 20 years, were now rebuilding lines of communication.
尼克森从中国回来之后，我们当时那个中文部的那个头，他是从台湾回来，他是外交官了，从台湾回来。他说，在台湾用的这个一本教材很好，他说不妨我们试一试。
In 1972, Voice of America began its program English 900.
何立达主持播讲英语900句。
That year, a Beijing youth, the 20-year-old Ping De, enlisted in the People's Liberation Army. His first job was to care for the horses in an army farm outside Beijing. One day, a fellow soldier gave him a copy of the book English 900.
这个书呢，来源还很不容易，因为当时呢，中国在这个文革后期嘛，逐渐的和外部世界又有了一些联系。据当时我们这个战友讲呢，是说因为好像中国的一些外交领导人到这个联合国去，这样的话才把这个英语900句这本书给带回到中国来，在当时所谓叫内部教材。后来人家就跟我讲，他说美国之音是有这个英语900句的这个课程的广播，这样我就开始跟着这个学，还专门去买了一个小的收音机，60-70块钱，在那个时候还是一个很贵的、很奢侈的这么一个家用电器吧。那时候单位里头也很明确，就是说鼓励大家学英语，但是呢，就明确说呢，不可以收听敌台。
Ping De was well aware that VOA was enemy radio, but he was hungry to learn. At that time, he was living by himself in a horse barn. During the day, he dealt with the horses, and at night, he listened to English 900. In his words, I felt I was living like a noble. It was beautiful. Later, he was transferred to the electricians' squad. Listening to enemy radio in a place with so many people, with eyes everywhere, was very difficult.
We paid them for the last semester.
那怎么办呢？那我就是说，钻到被窝里边去，带上一个耳塞机去听这个课程。但是呢，毕竟好多时候呢，还是需要把它念出来，因为你学英语嘛，你这种模仿是必不可少的。最后都没办法了，正好那时候在夏天的时候呢，我就带上收音机，拿个手电，再拿着书，然后悄悄的就跑到我们这个夏天的时候，旁边都种的是那种主要都种的是玉米，它那个秸秆很高，所以钻到玉米地里头以后是别人也不知道你在那里，你就在那里学就可以。
They sent us a bill for the new semester.
Only 2 semesters a year.
Ping De recalled, one time when I came out of the cornfield to go back to my dorm, I was tailed for a long time by the night patrol. Maybe he suspected I was dating a female soldier. In fact, the trouble you'd get into from being caught listening to enemy radio would certainly be much worse than being caught on a date with a woman.
用当时的话说叫上纲上线，所谓上纲上线就是说那你如果要是收听敌台，那你就是一个很可能是一个通敌分子，那处罚是很严厉的。回想起来 ，English 900也学了有半年多呢，坚持下来也是挺不容易的。是何立达的，每次结束的时候，他就是讲这里是美国之音的英语900句课程，何立达在华盛顿主持播讲。
说实话，我自己本人并没有想到，做的一个很成功的一个美国之音的一部分。第一，我觉得那时候的时机很好，那我相信播报的声音呢还是不错。我对于这个节目呢也非常有兴趣，也用了一些脑筋，所以我看这就是成功一个因素。主要的我还是觉得那时候大陆真是一般的人 都是想学英语，可是很可怜，没有英语教师。
Thanks to English 900, Pingde could speak excellent American English. In 1975, the head of his unit gave him a college recommendation because his English was good and he did his job well. That is how listening to enemy radio helped him fulfill his dream of going to college. In the winter of 1977, China resumed the college entrance examination system, suspended for 10 years by the Cultural Revolution. The traditional watchword, "Knowledge changes destiny," became realistic once again, inviting large numbers of young people to study as a means to social respect. And learning English became especially popular. Voice of America's English 900 became a familiar point of reference. One listener, Lu Xin, recalled, "By the 1980s, the atmosphere had completely changed. Some colleges even put Voice of America programs on their own broadcast systems, and nobody worried about it." In 1979, the U.S. and the People's Republic established formal relations. After the horrific 10-year Cultural Revolution, the Chinese people viewed the outside world, especially the West, with great curiosity and hope.
From Washington, here is the news in VOA Special English.
For the new generation of college students, Voice of America's news programs and programs in special English were among the main ways to follow current events and learn English. More and more people made listening to the Voice of America a regular part of their daily lives. In the 1980s, according to Chinese officials, the Voice of America's listeners in China numbered over 17 million.
这是美国之音的中文广播。
各位听众，VOA 有一个了解中国情况的一些特别的节目吧。因为我总是记得父亲总是到了什么点的某一个时间的时候呢，就弯着腰听着那个小小的收音机，差不多贴到耳朵上。实际上呢，父亲是想通过这样听收音机、听外电的一些报道，来了解世界的情况和了解中国发生的情况。
Among the top leaders of the party, the government, and the military, Voice of America had more listeners than just Zhao Ziyang. Li Peng's June 4th diary, published overseas, mentions VOA in over a dozen places, showing that even the hardline Li Peng, Zhao Ziyang's chief opponent, member of the Politburo Standing Committee, and Premier of China, was a loyal VOA listener. April 24th. In the morning, I heard the Voice of America say that the students went on strike to protest the police use of violence, to pressure the government to grant democracy and freedom. May 11th. The Voice of America broadcast said, the large demonstration on April 27th marked a turning point in Chinese history. May 30th. The Voice of America said China is conducting a Stalinesque purge of the party. The Tiananmen democracy movement of 1989 raised the Voice of America's prestige in China to new heights. The students in Tiananmen Square even set up a loudspeaker broadcasting the Voice of America.
新闻广角镜。
After the June 4th crackdown against the democracy movement, the Chinese government started jamming the Voice of America again, setting up unmarked jamming facilities all over the country, telling the outside world they were relay stations.
通常都是干扰非常大，我们都听不到什么东西，滋滋啦啦、滋滋啦啦乱响，因为信息控制的这你都知道了，控制的很厉害。现在想起来，了解中国的情况还要听美国或者法国的电台，实在是很可悲的。
These jamming stations broadcast sometimes pure noise and sometimes folk songs with drums, gongs, and shrill pipes. A listener in Sichuan wrote in, "I use an earphone so the neighbors won't know, but the drums and gongs are deafening. If I listen too long, I get dizzy and see stars. Still, I keep listening." In September 1994, VOA began television broadcasts in Chinese.
而支出增加了。我是李素，
我是宁鑫。
首先报告新闻提要。
In July 1999, VOA established a Chinese language website. The Voice of America had grown from mere radio to a multimedia operation: radio, television, and the internet. Just as it jams the radio broadcasts, China now blocks the Voice of America website. In spite of this, by the turn of the century, VOA's Chinese website was getting 100,000 hits each day. And every week, the radio broadcasts were heard in China by 8 to 10 million people. Today, though the Chinese people have incomparably better sources of information than when the country was sealed off from the outside world, still there has been no loosening of the blockade against Voice of America radio and internet. And setting up a satellite television dish requires explicit permission from the police. Many people in China are still getting reliable news from the outside world through the Voice of America. Well-known public intellectual Yao Jianfu has said that Chen Xitong, late mayor of Beijing and member of the Politburo and the State Council, relied on Voice of America for news during his confinement in Qincheng prison.
我说你怎么知道国外说陈锡同的贪污事？他说允许带一个收音机，他听的就是美国之音，所以他通美国之音在监狱里面听到了各种信息。我说你这还了不起，美国之音还给你提供了那么多信息，所以美国之音在这一点，我觉得起的作用可能也不可小估。所以对他来说，等于除掉人民日报以外，就是美国之音知道各方面的信息。
知道一些高层领导，特别是一些不是很得意的这些高层、最高层，甚至政治局常委什么的，他们得到就是共产党给他们的信息也是，就是不完全是真的，所以他们也听，兼听则明，他们听是公开的听，甚至秘书、警卫员给调好了听，到了时间提醒首长一下，哎，这美国之音要广播了，等等，他们是公开的。最近我到美国以后，听一些国内来的朋友讲，就说现在这些高层领导人人听。
China's famous blind human rights activist Chen Guangcheng was released from prison on September 9, 2010, 5 years after his arrest. But he remained under house arrest, under heavy guard. During this time, he listened almost every day to the Voice of America shortwave broadcast.
刚刚回家的时候是没办法听的，因为家里没有这个事。后来过了1天还是几天，我把一个很破的收音机修理了一下，能够勉强的听到一点点这个关于美国之音的报道。就是因为效果特别差那个时候。
Chen Guangcheng's house arrest drew the attention of the world. Voice of America followed the story closely.
维权律师陈光诚的现况受到国际社会的密切注意，
尤其是在2月11、12号的时候，我听到过一些美国之音的报道。那个时候一般都是在晚上8点钟以后吧，我记得，好像还有重播，9点钟还要再播一次，9点钟以后。
那时候听到的感觉会特别不一样。
怎么说呢？对，那个时候就是唯一的信息渠道嘛。
Later, the people overseeing Chen Guangcheng's confinement took away his radio. His only source of information about the outside world was cut off. In April 2012, Chen Guangcheng, with help from 4 online friends, eluded the guard of over 100 people stationed around his village and entered the American embassy in Beijing. After negotiation between the two countries, Chen Guangcheng and his wife and children were allowed to leave China for the United States.
从山东东四股走出来了。
共产党对信息的封锁， 虽然不像以前那样完全能封锁住，但是封锁的程度也是很厉害的。你说翻墙，现在有多少？还说年轻人都会翻墙，没有都会。其实啊，能翻墙出来看电脑的人连1%都不到，大多数人，而且农村那些人，很多人很穷的。大家忽略了一点，中国有1半的人口在联合国的贫困线以下，他们哪儿买得起、玩得起电脑呢？而对这些普通老百姓，广播是非常重要的东西，比其他的媒体都重要。
The Cold War is long past. China grows ever more deeply involved with America, culturally, economically, and politically. But for Chinese authorities, there is no real change in Voice of America's status as enemy radio. In 2013, General Liu Yazhou, member of the Central Committee and political commissar of the National Defense University, had his university join with the military's political department and general staff department and the Academy of Social Sciences to produce a television documentary called Silent Contest. It expressed in full measure the hostility and distrust of the United States felt by the Chinese army, government, and party. It warned the people that America was working through 5 channels: politics, culture, thought, institutions, and society, to overthrow China. In one of these, the leading force, it said, is the voice of America.
太多的证据表明，互联网的控制和运用业已成为美国向世界各目标国家发动政治打击、策划政治颠覆的基本手段和主要途径。毫无疑问，他们的下一个目标早已瞄向了中国，这绝非耸人听闻。
Voice of America is fulfilling a wonderful role, and I'm here to congratulate the Voice of America and reach out to the Chinese people who are America's greatest ally in the cause of freedom.
What you have been able to do is pierce the great bamboo curtain, the great firewall of China, with a message of hope, a message of freedom.
For 15 years now, the Voice of America. Voice of America occupies, I believe, a key part.
The Voice serves the interests.
A free flow of information is the lifeblood of democracy.
I'm proud to say that the Voice of America still speaks strongly.
We're going to shuffle to camera 3.
再次激化中日的紧张关系的。
欢迎您来到法国，这种改变。我张内外，欢迎光临。
观视回避的真相。
他所见的那个现状，
你把真相至少让大家知道，究竟是不是一项不可能的任务？林书豪在纽约尼克队的。
VOA 有问必答。
伊拉克的局势动乱越演越烈，
大约是在1万亿美元。
中国也出现了可喜的亮点。
就很像人被关在黑屋子里似的，突然有一线那个光线进来，你会觉得特别惊喜，特别振奋。
它给我们在紧紧封闭的铁桶中开了一个洞，就一个小洞，我们就看到很大的世界。
请您继续收听收看《美国之音》。
presents the following National Geographic program as we continue to explore the world around us.
I had no idea that something so gorgeous could be causing such harm on our native reef ecosystems. Lionfish are what is known as an invasive species. They can produce 2 million eggs over the course of 1 year and are voracious predators. They're essentially like the Hoover vacuums of the sea. When I was 17, I was diving off the coast of South Florida and I saw the most beautiful fish I had ever seen. It had these bold stripes and these big dramatic spines, and I had no idea what it was. So I went to the dive master and he told me I had just seen a lionfish, and I was hooked. I started reading everything I could about this strange and beautiful fish, and what I found completely astounded me. I had no idea that something so gorgeous could be causing such harm on our native reef ecosystems. Lionfish are what is known as an invasive species, and that's defined as a species that is non-native to its area and that is causing harm or is likely to cause harm. Now, lionfish are originally from the Indo-Pacific region, and they were introduced off the coast of South Florida in the mid-1980s. And most likely it was through an aquarium release, so someone who had some pet lionfish didn't want to take care of them anymore and then just dumped them into the local waterways. So this is problematic for a couple reasons. First, lionfish are prolific breeders. They can produce 2 million eggs over the course of 1 year, and one lionfish and all of her offspring can produce 8.1 quintillion eggs in just 3 months. And the other thing is they are voracious predators. They're essentially like the Hoover vacuums of the sea. They can eat anything up to half their size, and unfortunately that includes a lot of the really cool, interesting reef fish that we like to see on the reef as divers. To top it all off, they have a series of venomous spines lining their back. This produces a very nasty neurotoxin that causes pain and swelling if you're stung. One of my interviewees told me that it won't kill you, but it'll make you wish you were dead. So this is definitely not a fish that we want wandering around where it doesn't belong. And the more I read about this fish, the more I realized that there was a lot of talk about the biology and ecology of lionfish, but really no one was diving into the kind of social implications of this fish. So I went to South Florida and I found this incredible community that is completely rallied around the removal of this species using whatever resources they have at their disposal. For example, you have Bob and Maria Hickerson. They're located in South Florida, and they would go in their free time and try and remove as many lionfish as possible on their local reefs. But they were getting so frustrated because they were leaving so many fish behind. So they took some tools and random things they found at Home Depot and created the very first lionfish-specific spear gun. So now you can remove them at a much faster rate. And then Maria takes the spines and the fins and creates really beautiful pieces of lionfish jewelry. She then sells them to support the removal initiatives, but also raise awareness about lionfish as an invasive species. You also have people like Mike Ryan, who is a dive instructor in Key Largo, and he was scared to see the increasing number of lionfish off his reefs, but what was even more disconcerting was how many people were coming through his dive shop who had no idea what lionfish were and why they were a problem. So he created a lionfish safari hunter course where you can actually learn how to remove lionfish safely and effectively, and then go out and do your own lionfish hunting dive. So of course, I had to try, and I'm actually taking what I learned and teaching you all today, so you too can become lionfish hunters. So I have a subject. Oh, geez. Okay. It was a test. Okay, so this is Larry the lionfish. He came with me on all my travels. And here are the tools you need to become a lionfish hunter. You have a pole spear, which is a 3-pronged spear. There's other larger ones, but this is the travel size. And you have a puncture-proof medical-grade glove. And so this is to ensure that you don't get stung by a lionfish and run into problems with your dive. So lionfish have no natural predators, so they allow you to get really close, which is why this spear works on lionfish, but not lots of the other types of fish in the reef. So you find your lionfish, you get all close, and then you pull this very tight rubber band to create the tension, and then you sneak up and you have your lionfish. So there you go, there's dinner. So now you know what to do when you encounter a lionfish in the wild. Okay, what's next? So the great thing about lionfish is that they're actually delicious to eat. And that's something that John Mirabella, who lives in Marathon Key, found out for himself. He would go out and remove lionfish in the morning and take it back to the restaurant he owned on Marathon and just experiment with all different types of recipes. So here's lionfish sushi, which I tried and it was delicious. And then I did run out of food money. I spent it all on diving. I have my priorities really messed up. And so I ended up eating lionfish for almost every meal for like 2 weeks, which is totally barbaric, but it was delicious. And the great thing is that in John's restaurant, he marketed that he was serving lionfish in the local newspapers, and people were coming from all over the Keys to sample this fish, which shows that even if people are removing them themselves, they're excited to support initiatives that are. So then my problem was, how do I tell these incredible stories of the people doing this grassroots management? I started with a website. I posted blogs and articles and photo galleries and whatnot. But I also had the opportunity to blog for National Geographic, which was one of the coolest things I've ever done. But the best part about it was when those blogs would get picked up by the social media channels. All of a sudden, my piece is getting tweeted out to millions and millions of people, and then something truly incredible would happen. We'd spark this online discussion about lionfish and about invasive species. And I had people saying all kinds of stuff like, wow, I had no idea they were so invasive, or did they really taste that good? Or I can't believe you're removing this beautiful fish, you crazy. Like, I literally had everything. I had everything under the sun people say, and to be honest, I didn't care what they were saying. What mattered to me was that they were having that conversation. Invasive species are a massive problem around the world, and it's just not something that many people know about. In the United States alone, 42% of the species that are listed as threatened or endangered are at risk due to invasive species. So this is something that we can't ignore. So I just got back from the Millennial Trains Project, which was a cross-country train journey from LA to DC, where I looked at invasive species management throughout the American South. This guy was in New Orleans. He was quite a character. He uses invasive nutria and invasive Asian carp on his menu, and also includes an educational component so people can learn about what they're eating. Then I was in San Antonio looking at a group of people who, in their free time, organize volunteer groups to go remove invasive weeds. This particular weed is called cat's claw vine, and it has a series of very, very sharp thorns. And to demonstrate that, my guide threw it at me to see how it would stick to my shirt. And it did, and it hurt. So that's some of the fun things you get into in the field. My next trip takes me to Fiji, and there I'm looking specifically at what they're doing right. So Fiji has one of the best examples of community-based invasive species management in the world. They do an amazing job at engaging the local community, not only in removal, but teaching them how to do long-term monitoring. It's not enough just to sweep in and remove a bunch of species and leave. You really need to know what to look for in the future and how to prevent the invasions from ever happening. So this whole project started as me seeing a fish that I thought looked really cool. But the deeper I dive into invasive species management, the harder it is for me to step away. I've learned not only how many people have been affected by the species, but how many people have stepped up to the plate and helped defend their communities and homes. So I encourage you to follow along, to go back to your home and go back to your community and learn what is invasive in your community. Not only what it is, how to identify it, but what you can do about it. Are there any removal initiatives that you can volunteer and take part in? Because this is something that we cannot handle if we try and do it in these little isolated communities. Everyone has to have a stake in this and participate and help defend your homes and communities from invaders. Thanks all.
VOA, exploring the world around us.